Communication mix, as we have already done, so very quickly we will recall what we have already talked about communication mix, so that we can be at the same line when we start talking about this. Communication mix is what? Promotion mix. In marketing we were doing promotion mix, and in your coming semester we will also talk of integrated marketing communication, so that will also talk of communication mix. So communication mix is about how to communicate and how to mix the various sources of communication so that the effect can be larger, right? So this is what we will try to do. So all the principles which you will talk of it in marketing management, they are standstill here also, so they can also be applied. So here we will try to discuss those things which are not discussed yet, and something which makes the services different from products, so that part we will try to emphasize on. We will look at the intangibility perspective of services, and then we will try to look at what is it about services that can be communicated. See, why this question becomes important is because when you talk of a product, the product is visible, it can be touched, it has a feel, right? It has a color, so you can touch it and you can market it. So when you're marketing a product, you are doing what? You are actually speaking about a product which people can see. But in services, it is not the case, right? So in services, you have to communicate intangibility, right? So intangibility, when you're talking of communicating, then there are some challenges. Now the question is that how this intangibility can be communicated, and this is something that we will try to spend some time on when we will be talking of communication mix that through in services. So designing communication mix would actually encompass some questions. We have already talked about these questions, and these are the questions. So first of all, we have to know that who we want to talk about, or who we want to talk to, not about. So what is and who is our target audience? So the communication has to be specific in terms of the people that you're talking to, right? So this is the first question that you will be speaking about. Second thing is that what is it that you want to communicate? So the message, right? So in integrated marketing communication, we will talk of the message a lot. So how the messages are framed, what is it that should be kept in mind, how the copywriting can be executed, how the execution of ad becomes important, right? Because the communication of the intended message depends a lot onto the execution capability of the marketer also, right? So that is something that we will talk here also. How should we communicate this? What should be the medium? What should be the theme that we should choose? And how encompasses a lot. So that would mean what source you should be using. Should you be using the celebrity source, or you can use some other source also? Can you use the general public? Can you or will you be able to have the same effect when you will be using some other source but not the celebrity? So those questions will actually be coming here. Where should we communicate this? So where means the media planning, right? So we have discussed it that media planning is a very complex exercise, and it invites a lot of brain to decide that what platform should be used for what type of communication and when, right? So when do the communication needs to take place? So the timing of the communication. So you would see that for the cyclic products, in other terms, you know these products by seasonal products also. So for example, when you talk of cold drinks, you know that this is a seasonal product, and when it is a seasonal product, then you know that there is a time at which it needs to be done, right? And as and when we will talk of more on communication, that we would realize that there are a lot of strategies which actually revolves around and which tries to answer this question: when do the communication needs to take place? Now, for example, you would have been recalling some of the brands which continuously talk to people. Continuously means their communication, their advertisement is available on broadcasting stations, on radios, on print media, everywhere for 12 months of the year. Every time you will find these people talking. There are some people you will find that there is a time period when you will not see these brands talking to the consumers, and thereafter they will again start, right? So this is how we actually try to look at it. And when you are talking of communicating to the people regularly, continuously, then that is called as a continuous talking strategy. Intermittently you can also do. So that those questions should actually be addressed here. When do the communication needs to take place, right?
सर इसकी जरूरत क्या है? लाइक मार्केटिंग मिक्स है हमारे पास, इसकी पर्टिकुलर कम्युनिकेशन मिक्स.
Communication mix is part of marketing mix, because in what is marketing mix? Marketing mix is 4 P's: product, price, place, and promotions. I have already told and we have already discussed that this communication mix is nothing but it is promotion mix. So promotion is part of marketing mix. So meaning thereby it actually becomes in larger sense part of marketing mix only, right? So that is how we actually need it, because in marketing mix we need promotion, so we have to talk of this, right? And the reason of doing this is because there are too many ways by which the promotion can be executed, can be done, right? The vehicles are many, and how do you mix up these vehicles so that you can actually make a good use of it? So that is why we have to talk of communication mix. So this is something that we have already talked about. So target audience, the first first question that we were talking of, it primarily talks of three things in particular. So you talk of prospects, users and employees. We have discussed it that when you are communicating, may not be the case that you are only concerned about your customers, but your employees also are part of this communication, because your employees also feel proud of being associated with a company which is known in the public at large, which is having a good reputation in the people's mind. So the users, everyone, in fact, you have to just recall the talk that we have already done on strategy. So in strategy we were talking about that there is something which is called as public, and what is public and how the public is defined. Public is defined as all those people or the group or the associations which directly or indirectly have the potential to influence your way of doing business. So everyone has an influence, so they all need to be talked to, and hence the communication is not only for your consumers but it's for everyone, right? So the crafting service messages, this becomes important, because when we will be talking of the kind of influence of your communication. How do you measure the effectiveness of your communication? You will only be able to do that when you already have established objectives, because against these objectives you will check whether you have been able to achieve what it was intended to be achieved by this communication or not. So this is something that we talk of crafting the messages. So messages becomes very, very important. Other day also we were discussing about this model, which is IDA. I hope you will recall. We were talking of awareness, interest, desire and action. So when you're talking of communication objectives, then you can have awareness as one of your objectives. You can have interest as one of your objectives, right? You can have creating desire in the mind of consumers about my brand. It can also be one of your objective. Action means purchase, sales. So when we very laymanly say that the ultimate objective of an advertisement campaign is going to be only to sell the product, so we are wrong. May not be that the sale is always the objective. The objective can be something else also. So that also we need to decide. Service communication objectives, that is already we have talked about. Now the way we have started this communication was that we are doing it in light of services, right? So in services, why and what rather we should discuss and what rather should we be spending time on is that the services relates more to intangibility and how this intangibility can be communicated. So this is something that we will be spending time on. Now the question is, when it comes on to services, what is it that can be communicated? So for products, the answer is very simple. The product, right? Now when you talk of communicating intangibility, so intangibility as such cannot be communicated. So this has to be done in context of something, right? So which means, how do I ensure you that my restaurant is good, right? Because you are not seeing, because it is all about taste. I cannot make you feel taste by showing you something on television. Unless you do not consume it, you don't know, right? But in product case, you can know about the product, because you can go into the malls, you can test it, you can look at its functioning, its utility, you can make the people to play the things, and then this is how it is, and then actually you can do it. So the trial is not possible in services, right? So what is it? How do we ensure, how do we communicate about this? So hence communicating intangibility becomes a challenge. And so the other question which arises out of this is that let us try to find out the other things which are associated with services that can potentially be communicated, right? And when these can be communicated, then consumer can have an inference about the services that I am or I will be providing, right? Now for example, have a look at this. Only media advertising, public relations, salesperson is not communication. So this is specifically in case of services. Now look at the second line, service factory. Service factory is such an important term. Yes, what is service factory? Where the services are being produced. Now how service factory makes more sense in communicating services is because that the services are produced and consumed simultaneously. And when you say that it's being produced and consumed simultaneously, that means the factory or the place at which the services are being produced, it is the same place at which it is being consumed also. So this room is service factory, because when I am speaking, I am producing it. It is not stored, it is not recorded. Right? So I am producing it now, and now only you are consuming it. Now the question is, can this service factory be communicated? So, I mean, this is how we talk of communicating intangibility. I hope you would recall when in earlier discussions we have talked about already about something which is the core services and supplementary services, right? And when we were talking of that service flower, we were talking about it, the analogy fits so well that the middle part of that flower is your core service, and the petals of the flower represents facilitating services or the mandatory services kind of thing, which overall are called as supplementary services. So if even one petal, if even one part of that supplementary service is taken out of this flower, then the shape of the flower is in vain. It doesn't look good, right? It has to be there. Everything has to be there. So that flower concept tells us that the supplementary services are in fact those things which makes us feel the intangibility, right? So which means, can these supplementary services be communicated? Meaning thereby, if we are saying yes to it, then can service factory be communicated? In other terms, can infrastructure of this university be communicated when telling the people that this is a good university, you come and study here?
Like just बायजूस की ऐड आती है, सर्विस है, वो अपनी जैसे ऑनलाइन ही है उनका सब कुछ, तो उस टाइम तक वो अपनी जो फैक्ट्री सर्विस फैक्ट्री उसको भी कम्युनिकेट ही कर रहे हैं, क्योंकि उसके अंदर जैसे दिखाते हैं एनिमेटेड सारी चीजें होती हैं,
राइट,
तो एक साथ हो रहा है,
एक साथ हो रहा है. एंड दिस इज प्रिसाइजली व्हिच इज इंपॉर्टेंट टू अंडरस्टैंड, बिकॉज इन सर्विसेज दिस नीड्स टू बी कम्युनिकेटेड.
क्योंकि जो उनकी सर्विसेज है वो भी वर्चुअल है, जैसे जो 3D इमेजेस बना रहे हैं, जो समझा रहे हैं, तो
the concept is being communicated, the concept that they are using, and that has to be communicated in services, because in services you do not have a physical thing, it is a concept that you are selling, right? Now remember the discussion on queue. We have already talked about queues. Do you remember when we were saying that in services there is something which is called as risk factor, right? जिसको हमने कहा था perceived risk about services, if you can recall it. And in that perceived risk, we were also talking of some strategies to reduce this perceived risk about services. And what were the strategies that we were talking about? Some of the potential strategies were to give cue to the people that this is a good service. So the cue was what? Let me make you recall that thing that we have already discussed. If you are walking into a hospital or a clinic, so if on the walls of that clinic, so there are the certifications of the doctors, if the doctor has participated in a conference, if doctor has conducted some research about his field, when this is being presented to you and you are reading it, you are having some confidence on the doctor. These are cues. So you are not offering the real service, but you are actually using the cues to speak about this intangibility, right? And this is something that we are talking here also. So whatever which is associated with the services, even every petal of that service flower, those supplementary services should be communicated, and one of them can be service factory also. So service factory should be communicated. Now the question is, can locations and atmosphere talk? So when we talk of service factory, we are talking what? We are talking this. We are talking atmosphere, right? We are talking locations. Can these talk? So the question is that they talk. It is not a question, it is something which is truth.
Like
Library, yes.
सर्विस प्रोवाइड करा रहा है, लेकिन उसका एटमॉस्फेयर देखिए वहाँ.
Right. So what is the difference between, say, IIM and some other institute? It is the atmosphere. Can that be talked? You go into any top university website of this world, and you will find a tag onto their website which says life at university name. When they are saying life at university name, what is it that they are doing? They are communicating the atmosphere. They are communicating how will you enjoy your life when you are in campus of this place, and which means they are communicating this. So that becomes very important. And just to make sense of that, now have a look at this. What are they doing when this hotel is actually showing this picture to the world, when they are communicating? Now let me tell you, when I am presenting these pictures to you, these pictures are of those hotels which are among the most expensive hotels of this globe, not only a country, right? Now this place is Hotel Connaught in London, right? So this is one of the expensive hotels. Now if you would talk of the rate, it is $23,500 per night. So this is what they charge. I mean, what is it that they are charging for? What is it that they are charging for? As per one study that I was reading, when you go in a restaurant, when you go in a restaurant, only 25 to 30% of the price goes to the food that you are eating there. Rest of the price is for something else. Are you getting the point? Huh? What is it that you are paying the money for? You are paying the money for atmosphere. You are paying the money for
MBA
service factory. You are paying the money for this ambience,
जो provide करवा रहे हैं।
right? कितना?
70 lakh.
So that is what I am telling. This is one of the most expensive places in the world to stay. So 17 lakhs for one day, if you are paying. So what is it that you are paying for? And it is not only this room that we are talking about. The location would matter. The brand name of this hotel would matter. The location would matter. Huh?
लोगों की प्रेस्टीज को चैलेंज कर रहे हैं, इसलिए भी हो सकता है।
So what are we saying then? When you are talking this word prestige, even this hotel is communicating that prestige also. So when I was just sharing with you that 25 to 30% of the amount that you pay as part of your restaurant bills, only 25 to 30% of that is for the food that you are eating. What for you are paying the 70% amount? You are paying for these things. Let us look at this another hotel.
It means जब last time हम एक डिस्कशन कर रहे थे जिसमें फिजिकल एविडेंस था या कोर प्रोडक्ट आपको खाना अंदर नहीं मिलेगा और बाहर नहीं मिलेगा, यानी कि खाने के बाद का जितना भी बचा सब कुछ उस फिजिकल एविडेंस का पे करना है।
Exactly.
तो वहाँ मैटर करता था।
And let us see, we are only discussing one part of it. We are talking of intangibility of services. So intangibility of services is a very large thing. So atmosphere is only one part of it. So the experience that you draw out of it, that is, something which is maybe for this experience you are paying the money. So this physical evidence is one part of it. Now since we are talking of what all should be communicated about services, then the thing is that this atmosphere should be communicated. Physical evidence should be sold. And it is for this also you are paying a lot of money. So this is Royal Villas in Athens. He will talk of its price. It is $35,000 per night. So what is it that they pay? It becomes more than 17 lakhs, right? So let us look at some other place. So these are the places which actually will sell themselves for who they are, for their prestige, whatever you may call it. So atmosphere actually sells. That what does the research says about it? You will find enormous papers which talks about that the store atmosphere and environmental psychology approach. So this is a very prestigious journal and it is running into 60th year almost, you see. And that is in 1982. So in 1982 the journal has 58 years that it is publishing. So which means it would have started somewhere in 1930s. Such an old and prestigious journal, and in that such Columbia University and New York University's professor are publishing about store atmosphere. How can it influence, the perception about the services of the restaurants? So the research also speaks about it. Now let us look at this another paper which is written by Philip Kotler. We all know Philip Kotler. So this is the original paper published in 1973-1974. The name of the paper is Atmospherics as Marketing Tool. I mean, this directly relates to what we are doing. We were talking, can atmospherics be communicated? Can physical evidence be communicated? And Kotler writing it in 1973 and 74 that yes, it is a marketing tool. When he is calling it as a marketing tool, I mean, there is nothing left. He is actually saying that this is sellable. He is actually saying this is something which should be communicated. Right? This is what he is trying to say. So, and if you will look at the other side of it, then there are numerous papers which are available. And this is in Environmental Communication published in 2010, another prestigious journal which says why it matters how we frame the environment. Right? So that matters. When you walk into a Levi's showroom, I mean, you get a different experience. When you walk into a theme restaurant, the theme restaurants absolutely are, dependent upon this concept of environment, atmospherics, the physical evidence. What do you feel? What do you look at when you walk into a place? So another paper which speaks of the importance of servicescape in leisure service setting. Enormous papers, and these papers, it is not like that you have started seeing these papers of late only, but I have shown you the papers being published in 1973, then 82, then 2010, and these papers are on and on and on. Journal of Service Marketing, another very good journal in which it is published, right? So Emerald Insight, which is another and a very good journal, European Journal of Marketing. In that also the impact of servicescape on quality perception, and all those articles speaks of, and they converge onto this one thing, that physical evidence is a very important part of your service marketing. and this is something which needs to be communicated, right? You have to communicate. And now let me take you back to that case of McDonald's, wherein we were doing, they have introduced this self-service concept, and then when they are making the people to stand on their counters, then on the back side of them they have this wall which is transparent, and through that wall you can look at their kitchen. What are they doing by doing that? By making that transparent wall, they are marketing their kitchen also, because they know that we are spending so much on our kitchen, it is so clean, we should be communicating it, and that actually helps in building our brand also. So they are communicating that thing. So that communication has to be, that service environment, that physical evidence is one of those important things which should be communicated, right? So there is no doubt on it that it should not. Another paper from service marketing, effect of service scape on customers' behavioral intention in leisure service setting, right? So this is something that we are talking about. So enough proofs. You can go onto your computers, you can read about it, you can look at the research, you can even look at the opinion articles, you can go to your books. Wherever you go, they all are very much converged onto this fact that the physical evidence is that one important thing about services which should, and not should, which must be communicated, right? So in communication mix, communicating service environment becomes the key. Okay, so now the question is, what is it that the communication do, and what is it that we expect the communication to do in services? So when we talk of this, then we know that communication does something which are very much important, though the communication is a very, very vast term. It can talk of so many things, but let us talk of some of those things. The list can be very huge, but we are only talking of some of them. It positions and differentiates the services, and not only services, it positions and differentiates everything. What if it is a product, right? It promotes the contribution of service person and backstage operations. I do not think that it should require a degree of philosophy for us to understand this line. A while ago, I gave you an example of McDonald's. Should not you be communicating your backstage operations? You should do that. We will do it in the next discussion, that when you are spending so much on your backstage operations, should not they be communicated? I don't remember, or I'm not sure whether I've shared this story with you or not. At one side is this story of McDonald's, which actually are spending so much of money in keeping their kitchen clean, maintaining the hygiene. On other side, there would be some dhabas. You walk into their kitchen and you don't feel like eating. So when you are spending money onto this hygiene of your kitchen, I think that should be communicated. So the backstage operations needs to be communicated, because in services we have to go back to our previous discussion. The cues means a lot, because these are the cues which speaks about the service quality, and the backstage operations can become your one cue, right? You have to talk about this. You have to let the people see the McDonald's kitchen. What happens back inside the
they will feel like a feeling of transparency.
Exactly. You remember, in fact, this is such a strong thing. Now let me give you an example of a product, not of a service. I hope you would remember that story of Coke, when there was an earth form which was found in Coke or Pepsi. I don't remember exactly. What happened? Amir Khan came, and Amir Khan was talking about, come to our factory and see how we manufacture the cold drink. What are they saying? They are saying, look at our backstage operations. Don't look at our product. Look at how do we do it, how do we promote it, not promote it, how do we make it. And when you are doing that, you are giving them more confidence about it. And hence, they are doing nothing but they are promoting their backstage operations. What hygiene? Because for products, the problem is that the backstage operations are never communicated and never emphasized on. Because maybe they don't need to. But for services, I mean, this can actually make the people feel that this service would be good. Actually, it should be good.
सर जैसे पेट्रोल पंप एक सर्विस है, इसी तरह से जो गाड़ी की इंडस्ट्री है, पूरी पूरी कार इंडस्ट्री है, वो तेजी से ईवी में कन्वर्ट होती जा रही है, क्योंकि मारुति, टाटा, इसके अलावा जितनी भी कार कंपनी है, इवन महिंद्रा जो नए सेगमेंट में आई है और वो भी ईवी की तरफ बढ़ रही है, तो ये किसी नई सर्विस को जन्म देने के लिए
देखिए,
तो, क्योंकि जैसे कि प्रमोट करते जा रहे हैं, वैसे वैसे लोग ये सोचने लगे हैं कि अभी तक जो पेट्रोल पंप है उस पर इलेक्ट्रिक सिस्टम और होगा, ठीक है, तो
इलेक्ट्रिक अलग से बनाएंगे सब,
वो होगा
कि सब स्टेशन अलग से बनेंगे
स्टेशन,
वो ठीक है, वो मुद्दा वो नहीं है कि वो अलग से बनेगा कि नहीं बनेगा, एक कंसेप्ट है। कंसेप्ट ये है कि क्या इनका क्वेश्चन ये है कि क्या ई वे पे जाना, या फिर इसको दूसरे शब्दों में क्या ऑटोमेट कर देना इन चीजों को, क्या ये सही है कि नहीं है, राइट? अब ये डिस्कशन हम करेंगे सर्विस फेलियर में। डज मेकिंग द प्रोसेस ऑटोमेटेड generates more customer satisfaction or it creates problem. Right? Now the question is, we will talk it in the next discussion, that there is something which is called as the potential fail points
Sir,
in the service delivery. Do we reduce potential fail points by making the process automated, or are we increasing the chance of those potential fail points when we are making the services automated? Now the question is, even petrol pumps are going to see this. If you go to Western countries, there is no one who is filling up, the fuel in your cars. You have to do it by your own. So that might happen. So which means you are actually getting, that petrol tank filler out of the system, and hence you are replacing a very important part of the service process, as the McDonald's has done by getting the waiters out of it. So now they will further make you to be a man who fills the gas or petrol or diesel in your cars. Right? That might happen. But the larger question is, how do you relate it to this? The common. आप भी कुछ पूछ रहे हैं?
I am saying, sir, same, we have discussed the same topic relating to automation.
We have discussed it, and there we will talk that automation might not be an answer. Right? Automation might create problems also, and when we will do service failure, we will talk on that. Right? Okay. So this is something that we have to talk of these things, backstage operations, right? We have to talk of service personnel. You would recall and you would remember, now the state bank or now the public sector banks are also getting little okay, but there were times when if you will go into an ICICI bank and if you will walk into an SBI bank, you will see the difference. Now still they are actually coming up with something, and they are realizing the importance of atmospherics and all. So why, when you walk into an ICICI bank, you will find a gentleman standing with a tie on it, and he will greet you, welcome sir, how may I help you? And on the other side, when you walk into a state bank, then they will shut down the door onto your face and say that now lunch time has come. So this service personnel, should not you communicate this? You should communicate this, right? So that is also an important point, because this communication is about all the cues which can communicate about the services. This is the concept that we are doing. So the promoting the contribution service personnel, backstage operations, this all should be emphasized a lot when we are communicating the services. Add value through communication content. Many times it so happens that the consumer do not realize that so much of thing is actually taking place in the backdrop. You just have to make them visualize that. And that can only be done through communication. So the consumer would never realize he's sitting into the restaurant, he's just ordering it and he's just feeling like that food has come and you have to eat it up and you have to go back and shut your mouth and it's finished. No, it is not the case. You just have to speak to them about the toil that goes behind. Now let us look at, I'll give you another example of Domino's. When you walk into Domino's, they have their own television sets. And on those television sets, they will speak of the history of Domino's. They will speak of the man who would have invented it. They will take you through the timeline. What are they doing? They are adding value to themselves. They are telling you that this is how we have started. They are telling you this is the efforts that we have put in. They are telling you that after so much of struggle, after so much of perseverance that we have been talking about it. Exactly. So this can be done by communication. So that television is a communication tool. You should use it. Right? So that thing also, many times you can look at the other examples also, wherein you were not aware of something but it was told to you. And when it was told to you, you actually unconsciously are adding value to it. Right? Hanji. Okay. Then we can talk of facilitating the customer involvement in service production. So which means facilitating the customer involvement. Now this thing is actually very important. It is through communication that you can do this. So which means what? Can you make customer part of service delivery? And this is what the market is doing. Right? Not online, you communicate to them, you make them feel proud in doing the self-service. McDonald's has made the people feel proud that you are doing self-service. That can be done through communication. Right? So this is what the communication can potentially do apart from the other things. So now what are the challenges and solutions for services? When we talk of communication specifically, we can talk of problems of intangibility. This is what we have been speaking about right from the time when we have started our discussion. And these problems of intangibility actually talks of something which is like, it is difficult to communicate the benefits of services to consumers, and you can very well imagine consulting versus computer. So computer can be touched, it can be felt, it has a shape, you can look at it, you can touch it, you can look at its functional utility, and you can understand the product. Consultancy is not something that can be understood because it is a service, and hence the intangibility is there. हाँ जी, कंप्यूटर से
ये सर्विस और प्रोडक्ट के
examples, two examples, one representing services, one representing a product. So for product, computer is a product, right? So in that it is little easier, but here the intangibility, how will you communicate that this is the best consultant? So how do you do that? We have actually talked about it, and this intangibility of services are famous.
सर्विस की ऐड
ओके, सो इंटेंजिबिलिटी ऑफ सर्विसेज के ऊपर भी बहुत लिखा गया कि इंटेंजिबिलिटी जो आप सवाल पूछ रहे थे हिमांशु, उसी के बारे में यहाँ लिखा गया है कि इंटेंजिबिलिटी इज समथिंग व्हिच इज मेकिंग द सर्विसेज अ चैलेंजिंग थिंग और द कम्युनिकेशन ऑफ इट बिकम्स लॉट ऑफ चैलेंजिंग. सो ये आपके बहुत सारे पेपर्स हैं जो आप पढ़ सकते हो, सर्विस इंटेंजिबिलिटी एंड इट्स इम्पैक्ट ऑन कंज्यूमर एक्सपेक्टेशंस और सर्विस क्वालिटी. सो एब्सोल्युटली इंटेंजिबिलिटी इज समथिंग व्हिच इज मेकिंग communicating the services a challenge. Now, how can it be overcome? We were talking about tangible cues can be given, right? Tangible cues. And what can be these cues? One cue we have already talked about, that is service factory, right? Service factory को हम communicate कर सकते हैं और उससे हम अपना communication जो थोड़ा सा बेहतर कर सकते हैं. Okay, now this is again talking on that line that service encounter. Service encounter कहाँ है? जहाँ consumer services को consume कर रहा है, वहाँ पर physical surrounding और एम्प्लॉय रिस्पॉन्स का इफेक्ट जो है ना आपका क्या होता है. क्या आप और हम इसे कम्युनिकेट नहीं कर सकते? फिजिकल सराउंडिंग, हम इसके बारे में ऑलरेडी बात कर चुके हैं. तो ये जो टेंजिबल क्यूज हैं ये आपके बहुत हो सकते हैं, राइट? इनके बारे में जो है हम ऑलरेडी काफी बात कर चुके हैं. सर्विस क्यूज एंड कस्टमर असेसमेंट ऑफ सर्विस एक्सपीरियंस लेसन फ्रॉम मार्केटिंग, राइट? सो दिस हैज टू बी कम्युनिकेटेड, राइट?
सर इंटेंजिबल क्यूज भी हो सकते हैं.
हाँ जी,
सर्विसेज के लिए सर इंटेंजिबल क्यूज भी हो सकते हैं.
if you can make the people perceive the way you want them to perceive, you are increasing your hardship by emphasizing on intangible cues while communicating something. If you can make them to look at some tangible cues, that will be little easier for them to accept.
So for example,
You can look at the intangible cues also, लेकिन उसमें थोड़ा सा चैलेंज हो जाएगा. उदाहरण के तौर के ऊपर जैसे इन्होंने कहा एग्जाम्पल, अब मैं ये कहूँ कि मेरा हॉस्पिटल जो है ना दुनिया में सबसे साफ सुथरा हॉस्पिटल है, फील होम. तो टेंजिबल क्यूज क्या है? मैं उसमें बिल्कुल फर्श लगा हुआ चमकता हुआ हनी जाएगा, उसको फोटो देख के अपने बालू बना सकता है, ऐसा फर्श वहां पर दिखा दिया, टेंजिबल क्यू है. उसके बाद इनटेंजिबल क्यू भी आप दे सकते हैं. इनटेंजिबल क्यू क्या दे सकते हैं कि भाई आप सिर्फ ये बताएं, फोटो नहीं दिखा रहे हैं, आप बताएं कि मैं तो साफ हूं, है ना, वन ऑफ द क्लीनेस्ट हॉस्पिटल. तो इनटेंजिबल आप बात वही कह रहे हैं, लेकिन क्यों आपने देने की क्या कोशिश करी? सपोज आप इसमें ये भी कहते हैं कि दो लोगों से जो है ना आपने टेस्टिमोनियल दिलवा दिया. टेस्टिमोनियल क्या होता है? टेस्टिमोनियल जो समवन हु स्पीक्स अबाउट अ ब्रांड, वो भी बोल रहा है, वो भी क्यों है, लेकिन वो इंटेंजिबल क्यों है? क्योंकि उसने बता तो दिया आपको वही चीज जो वो कहना चाह रहा है, बट आप उसे देख नहीं पा रहे हैं. वो रीजन भी है आपके लिए मानने का, बट वो इंटेंजिबल रीजन है क्योंकि आपको जो चीज जिसके बारे में कहा जा रहा है वो आपको दिखाई नहीं देगी. तो इंटेंजिबिलिटी से भी कम्युनिकेट कर सकते हैं, बट टेंजिबिलिटी से कम्युनिकेट करेंगे तो उसकी हार्डशिप उसे एक्सेप्ट करने की कम हो जाती है, राइट? नाउ दिस इज ऑल व्हाट वी कैन यूज व्हाइल कम्युनिकेटिंग सर्विसेज, एंड वी ऑल हैव डन इट, एंड इन फैक्ट वी विल टॉक ऑफ ऑल दोज थिंग्स व्हेन वी विल डू इंटीग्रेटेड मार्केटिंग कम्युनिकेशन. वी विल टॉक ऑफ पर्सनल कम्युनिकेशन, जिसे हम पर्सनल सेलिंग भी कह देते हैं जब उसकी बात करते हैं. एडवर्टाइजिंग, सेल्स प्रमोशन, पब्लिसिटी, पब्लिक रिलेशंस, इंस्ट्रक्शन, मटेरियल्स एंड कॉर्पोरेट डिजाइन. All these things, all these channels or the elements, whatever you may call it, they can actually be used. And this could be the traditional channels apart from what we have already discussed. And for other channels, if you have to talk, then these can also be used to communicate with services. So we are all aware of all these things, so we will not spend time on it. So we can talk of internet. Website होना चाहिए. Website also becomes a clue, but that can be, you can call it as an intangible clue, but that intangible clue can be used to give tangible clues, right? Online advertising, social network and communities you can use to communicate. Service delivery channels में service outlets, frontline employees and self-service points you can use to communicate. And you can use these things also to communicate about your services. So this can be word of mouth, blogs, Twitter, media coverage and all. So this is kind of story that we can talk of while we are talking of communication of